Hey, welcome into the Bruce Hooley After the Show. We do the show every day, 11 to 1 on 989theanswer.com in Columbus. You can listen online at 989theanswer.com. And you can catch the podcast. Same web address. We podcast the show in half-hour increments with the commercials taken out. But there are always headlines we don't get to. And before I get to some of those headlines, I want to remind you that if you need flooring in Central Ohio, soft step carpet and flooring in Plain City is the place to go. And I'm the guy to see when you go there. You can check me out on email, brucehooley@gmail.com. Tell me about your space. Tell me what you're looking for. We have all the major brands: Anderson, Mohawk, Shaw, Dreamweaver. We have all the LVP that looks like wood, looks like tile. We'll get it installed in a month and we'll save you money. And I can explain why we'll save you money when you reach out to me on email at brucehooley@gmail.com, brucehooley@gmail.com. All right, so one of the things that I talk about on a financial show that I do on the weekends is the physical cliff that we're headed for in the United States. And it's not just like a retirement physical cliff, it's all across the spectrum. And nowhere demonstrated more than in a story that I came across today about the tax burden that cities across America are going to face, or not so much the tax burden, but the burden of liabilities, of commitments that these cities have made. They got pensions, they got all these things that they are on the hook to pay according to union contracts and the like. And then, of course, they have money, theoretically, saved from, tax revenues over the years that they haven't spent. How are our cities doing as we fund all these new social programs and all this kind of stuff? Do we have the money to pay our future liabilities? Well, a study by the Center Square says we do not. It looked at 75 of the most populous cities in the U.S. Of those 75, 53, more than 2/3, did not have the money to pay all their bills. And this is from the latest numbers in 2022. Okay, so do we really care as much if LA and San Francisco and all those cities are overcommitted? What do we care about? We care about Ohio, right? At least I do. How are we doing in Ohio? Well, 3 of Ohio's 4 largest cities are not right now in a position to pay for all their future liabilities that they're on the hook for. The only one that is, congratulations, my former home, Cleveland, Ohio. It operates in a taxpayer surplus, according to this same study, but Columbus, Cincinnati, and Toledo all face a tax burden of thousands of dollars if you parcel out. They do the national debt, where the national debt is some astronomical number, and then they divide it by households, and you see what your quote-unquote share is of the national debt. Cleveland ranks 21st. It's in the best position of the 4 major cities in Ohio, an individual taxpayer surplus of $300 per household. So the city has $2.6 billion to pay, $2.64 billion to pay $2.61 billion in bills. So it's got a little bit of money left over, but not very much. What about Columbus? Taxpayers owe, if they were all going to pay for it and get the city off the hook, a little less than $3,000. Columbus has $2.7 billion on hand to pay $3.6 billion in unpaid bills. Toledo, it has $761 million to pay $1.1 billion. So it's about $250 million shy. And Cincinnati's in the worst place. It has a grade of D in this study, all run by Democrats. Coincidence? I say not. So's Cleveland. So's Columbus, by the way. Cincinnati, $1 billion on hand to pay $1.7 billion in future liabilities. Not good. Not good at all. Now, another story that caught my eye today, and this speaks to why you have to be on top of, analytically, content presented to you in a way to program you. But as you read it, you almost have to do a paragraph by paragraph check on, am I being told the truth or am I being lied to here? So here's the story. Columbus Dispatch. I don't know this gentleman, Jim Weicker, and he's not lying in this story, but he is creatively positioning, shall we say. And the headline is, why Columbus apartment rent ranks among the fastest rising in the nation. Now, what would you gather from that headline? You would gather that, like it says, Columbus apartment rents rank among the fastest rising in the nation. So does that mean we're paying more for apartments in Columbus than we're paying across the nation? It sure seems so. And the first couple paragraphs of the story would seem to underline that narrative. The median rent, which means half above, half below, for a Columbus apartment was almost $1,300 at the end of the year, up 4%, Jim Weicker writes, from a year earlier. The third highest jump in the nation, behind New York City and New Jersey. Well, I mean, that's suburban New York City. So if we're right up there with New York City and New Jersey, like our rent has to be astronomical, right? And he goes through like how hard it is to find an apartment for less than $1,000 a month. And he quotes people saying, I can't find anything in that range. Nothing. Everything's $1,100 or $1,200. So we have, like, according to this story, at least the first 12 paragraphs of it, we've got a major astronomical rise in rent costs until we get down to paragraph 13. I'll just quote from the story so you don't think I'm lying to you. Some good news for renters. The average Columbus rent is $1,298, well below the national average of $1,709. So we're paying $400 less a month for apartments in Columbus than they're paying across the country. Why isn't the headline, despite its rapid growth, Columbus renters paying $400 less than renters across the nation? That would be a positive headline, but it wouldn't inspire panic. It wouldn't undergird the developer line and the expert line, which is articulated later in this story. Well, we need more apartments. We're way behind on apartments. And the experts say, and you got to pay attention to the experts, because they're going to tell you how you should live, right? You might want to live a certain way, but they're going to tell you how you should live. The experts are that we're not building nearly enough apartments. By the way, that sentence that he discloses that we're paying $400 less per month for apartments goes on to say, and the pace of rent hikes in Columbus, remember way back here in the second paragraph of the story, it was up 4% from a year earlier, just like New York and New Jersey, the only ones keeping pace with our astronomical annual rise in rents. Now he says the pace of rent hikes in Columbus has declined from double-digit increases 2 years ago. So not only are our rents below, well below, $400 a month below the national average, but our rate of increase is way down from what it was 2 years ago. Now, the most important part of this story that I find interesting is, and Weicker's presenting all the information here that's factual, he's just stacking the deck to further the narrative that the Columbus Dispatch has decided to pound the pulpit on, which is we don't have enough affordable housing in Columbus, which is a lie proven by his one honest paragraph here. But he goes into, in the latter part of the story, something that I find interesting that he left out. He says housing construction has risen the past few years, but remains well below where experts say it needs to be. And then he quotes a guy named Trey Giller, President and Chief Executive Officer of Metro Development. And Trey Giller is going to tell us about 2 apartment complexes that his company built in Delaware, Ohio, same city, so apples to apples. One in 2020 and one this past year. And he says in the 3 years or so between the projects, which are very similar, Giller said the cost per apartment rose 46%. He says, we saw a tremendous increase in costs from 2020 to 2023. Now, this story printed out is 3 full 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper long. But you know what is not in it anywhere? Is any reference to explain why an apartment complex constructed in Delaware in 2020, an apartment complex constructed in Delaware in 2023, that there'd be a 46% difference in the cost of those 2 apartment buildings in the same exact area by the same exact company with probably the same exact contract. And the reason why that fact is not in the story is, of course, because can anybody tell me what's changed from 2020 to 2023? Have we had a change in, I don't know, the cost, the prices of things? Have we had a change in presidential administrations? Have we had a change in regulations? Have we had a change in emphasis on climate initiatives and other things that might make it harder to build now than it was to build in 2020? when we had a business-friendly president, when our costs were lower, when we didn't have inflation that had raised prices since Joe Biden took office in 20. Oh, there's the name that wasn't in the story, by the way. Prices that have gone up 18% across the board since Joe Biden took office. No, that's not mentioned here. Do you think if Biden had been president when the costs were 46% lower and Trump became president and the costs went up 46%, do you think that Jim Weicker or Trey Giller would have neglected to mention that? I don't think so. Call me crazy, but I don't think so. Now, the final item today concerns something that chafes me a bit in the aftermath of Chris Holtmann's firing at Ohio State. And that is this hesitance that I sense among not just Ohio State basketball fans, all 12 of them, but society at large, that it is somehow evil or unfair to harbor high expectations for a certain position in our society, president, senator, congressman, Ohio General Assembly member, basketball coach, that it is somehow unkind or unfair to hire someone to do a job, to expressly articulate the expectations of the job, pay a very fair, and I would even say high rate of compensation for the job, and then when someone fails to do the job, it's unkind to hold them accountable for failing to do it. I don't understand that. I have high expectations of myself every day on radio. I've always had that since I've been in radio. I had it for myself when I was at the Plain Dealer. If I misspelled a word, if I got a fact wrong, I was so mad at myself. But now we're in a culture where we're not allowed to hold people accountable. And I like Chris Holtmann a lot. I like him personally. I wish he would succeed. Nobody would have been, well, I'm sure his wife would have been happier, but I would have been very happy if Ohio State was a regular fixture in the Sweet 16 and made an occasional Final Four trip under Chris Holtmann, but it just didn't happen in 7 years. And so it's time for a change. But a letter writer to the Dispatch puts forth a viewpoint that I've heard from many people, as I've said over the past week since his firing, that it was time. I like him a lot. I didn't want to see it happen, but it was time. But it's not just a Chris Holtmann issue. It's a expectation issue and an accountability issue. And we don't have that in our culture anymore. Expectations, don't expect anything from me. Don't hold me accountable. I don't want to be responsible. Right, the border's closed. We're doing everything we can to lower prices. We're doing everything we can to lower gas prices. Don't hold me accountable. And the way that it comes back to us from the Biden administration is when you try to hold them accountable, they say, well, you're wrong. Bidenomics is working. The president is virile. He's getting more done in an hour than the rest of you knuckleheads get done in an entire day. No, he's not. No, he's not virile. He's not smart. He's not with it. The border's not closed. Gas prices are up. They were $2.40 a gallon when Trump left office. And I'm not a Trump guy. I'd much rather see almost any other Republican except Nikki Haley as the Republican nominee for president. But this letter is indicative. Guy writes to the Dispatch, I'm upset. Ohio State fired Chris Holtmann abruptly and unceremoniously in the midst of the season. He is a class act, true, and a great coach, not true, with an excellent and successful resume until he got here. This writer says, I'm not convinced he should be blamed for the disappointing losses of the past 2 years. Then who should? Who should? Is it unfair to blame someone? Anyone? He says sometimes it's the players one has. Bad shooting, bad breaks. Did those players show up here unannounced? Did Chris Holtmann not recruit them? Did he not coach them? Did he not attempt to develop them? Can we not hold people accountable for jobs they take, knowing the expectations of the job? Now, Chris didn't write this letter, and I assume this guy's not a relative of Chris, and I like Chris. Have I said that enough to convince you that I like Chris? I like Chris a lot. But Chris in 7 years didn't get Ohio State to the Sweet 16, and that's not acceptable for the level of the job. There are a lot of guys out there, a lot of people out there who'd like to coach Ohio State. No, 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 Jake Diebler is not the guy who they should hire. Great win against Purdue. I like Jake Diebler. This is a job you earn. You earn the job with past performance, just like president, just like senator, just like congressman, just like Ohio General Assembly member, just like radio host. You earn the job with your past performance, and then you're expected to rise to a level of expectation. We'd be a lot better off in our culture if we would hold to that. Expectations are not a bad thing. Expectations are a good thing. Accountability is even better. We don't have enough accountability in our culture. So those are the three things I wanted to share with you today. The best thing I can share with you today going forward is if you're a griller and you love great steak, I can hook you up with a membership to riverbendranchsteaks.com/Bruce Hooley. No hormones, no antibiotics in any of the Black Angus beef. It's bred genetically to give the best marbling for the New York strips, for the filet mignon, for the roast. If any of the cattle are ever sick, they're taken out of the herd, they're raised on ranch lands out west, one rancher, the whole ranch is one guy. It's not like Moink or Good Ranchers or Omaha Steaks or anything like that where you don't know the farmers. I'm sure they're good farmers. They come from everywhere and they contribute to one collective. At riverbendranchsteaks.com/Bruce Hooley, it's one rancher, one. The herd is his herd. It's big. Texas, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana. It's big. It'd have to be to ship steaks all over the world, and he does. You got a budget for 12, 15 pounds of steak a month that's 140-ish bucks. You can order every month. You can order every other month. Check it out online, riverbendranchsteaks.com/Bruce Hooley. That'll do it for the Bruce Hooley After Show. Thanks for watching. Listen to the show every day, 11 to 1 at 989theanswer.com. Have a good day.